Jason, I think you're a fucking baby murderer. Okay, you need to go to jail for even suggesting that we should murder babies. You fucking dumbass.
Sprout, you don't give a shit about women's rights. You just want them to be barefoot and pregnant their whole existence. You're just looking at them like giant fucking baby factories, you misogynistic asshole.
Okay, so tonight for everyone's stream, we're hosting and we're having a debate between Jason Society and the Sprouticus or Sprouticus on the topic of abortion. If I'm doing my job right and this debate goes well tonight, I shouldn't have to talk that much. We're going to hope that's how it goes. Of course, we're going to have to follow Twitch TOS. And if it becomes a screaming match, I'll probably have to do something about it. Outside of that, I'll give both of you a introduction of however long you please. And then we'll jump into the back and forth. Does that sound good with you two?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Who wants to go first?
Flip a
If not, I
coin.
can flip a coin. All right. Do you guys want to take questions? My chat's asking.
Yeah, we could take questions.
Yeah.
Or at least I could take questions.
I'm fine with that.
All right. Flip a coin. I didn't. Okay. Call heads. Who wants to call heads?
I'll call heads.
All right. Jason, you're going first.
All right. Cool. So I am Jason Society. You can find me at Twitch, Jason_Society. I am pro-life. I think that a woman has a right to choose what she wants to do with her body. I think there are a lot of extenuating circumstances as to why a woman may choose to have an abortion that go above and beyond the linears of rape and molestation or incest. I think that it's entirely in the most libertarian view of the matter. I think that forcing a woman to carry a baby is akin to conscription by the government, and I don't think the government should have that kind of control over women's bodies.
All right. Sprout. Now it's your turn.
Okay, so basically, when it comes down to it, I am when I'm pro-life. I've been pro-life for a long time. The idea behind me being pro-life is that it's not going to be done all at once, and it needs to be happening in baby steps. So the very first thing that needs to be done is abortion needs to be made illegal past 20 weeks. And we'll get into why 20 weeks later. But abortion needs to be made illegal past 20 weeks. Before 20 weeks, there needs to be 4 exceptions. One of the exceptions being rape, one of the other exceptions being incest, and the other 2 being the mother's health and the infant's health. Those are the 4 most important exceptions when you're talking about prior to 20 weeks. And those will only be temporary exceptions. When we come to a time where we have science has developed artificial wombs, I think abortion should be made completely illegal, considering the vitality of a fetus outside the mother's womb could it be almost 100% when you're talking about artificial wombs when science gets to that point. So the rest of it kind of depends on medical science, but until then, I would say it needs to be illegal past 20 weeks. And prior to that, there needs to be 4 exceptions, and that would be, again, mother's health, infant's health, rape, and incest.
All right. I think with that, we can jump into the basic discussion. I will let you handle it from here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my issue with that is that with the argument that, you know, we are putting conditions on this is I still have this, you know, as somebody who cares very much about liberty and my liberty and the liberty of others, to me, I look at this and I see an encroachment on people's liberties. I see people our government having to get into your medical records, into your medical background, into knowing more intimate and personal details than I think anybody really wants known about them. And I think this poses a huge issue where it comes to invasion of privacy, not just in terms of abortion, but what this can lead to as far as our medical privacy above and beyond the abortion question. This is just an entryway for the government to get into our medical and health records and decisions and start making more and more decisions for us. And, you know, before you know it, they're going to be saying men at certain ages have to be fucking have to be sterilized, have to get a vasectomy. They're too old to be able to take care of kids. You know, there's going to be something like that. That's what potentially I see can happen from the standpoint of liberties when we start messing with this shit. When we start messing with getting into people's medical decisions.
Okay, and I mean, kind of what I would say to that, and I don't disagree that it's kind of it's a risky spot you're putting yourself in when the government has access to your health records, has access to these records that are we hold dear, we hold private. These are private records that we're not even like obligated to give to our employer. And so we get into a tough spot there. But what I do think is more important than that is the protection of life. I believe that protecting these fetuses' life, because it is life, and we can go over if you believe it's not life or whether it is life or not life. It is life at a certain point when we look at it, and past 20 weeks, a baby can feel pain. Because you can see the baby actively dodges needles, according to a couple of studies, the fetus will actually actively dodge a needle when at 20 weeks. So that's evidence that a baby can feel pain at 20 weeks. So with that being said, I feel like the protection of human life is far more important than us keeping our medical records away from the government. And I think that the government should be able to protect the liberty and the freedoms of the baby's right to life as more dear than our right to privacy, considering the medical records around abortion.
So we have to protect everybody, but this again is where I'm going to disagree. Is a baby a life? That is a good question, and it is something that's been raised, and I understand your perspective on the pain analogy. What I would say is that one thing that we can gauge and may find some agreement on is that if a child is viable outside the womb and there is a way to extract the child as to not discomfort the mother or put the mother in any certain way, I could feasibly see the potential for creating a means around that to limit abortions where there is life viability outside of the womb. Prior to that, though, 20 weeks, from what I'm understanding, wouldn't quite hit that mark. You'd be looking at more like 29 weeks. I would not warrant that. And even at that rate, it's still a woman's choice as to whether or not she wants to carry the baby. Birth in and of itself is a very, very risky medical procedure. There is a high mortality rate for women who carry births to term too. So I think that there's a lot there for a woman to decide, and I think that's why it has to ultimately, at the end of the day, be the woman's decision. Hopefully with the advisement of her medical practitioner and her family and spiritual advisors if need be. But ultimately, I think that even 20 weeks seems like that's really, really early for me. I don't know that I could buy into that. As to the
but if you
go ahead.
So if you're going to make the choice on abortion, the first thing you have to do is understand that you're pregnant. That's the very first thing you have to do is understand that you're pregnant. And so when you do that, you're talking 4 weeks, 8 weeks. Within 4 weeks, you're going to miss your first period. Within 8 weeks, you're going to miss your second period. Within 12, you'd miss your third. Within 16, you would miss your fourth. If they don't know they're pregnant by missing their fifth period, I think that there's a much higher issue with their ability to comprehend information than there is I didn't know I was pregnant at 20 weeks pregnant.
If they're not adequately able to comprehend that information at that stage, they may not be adequately equipped to make decisions around the life of a child. Thereby, wouldn't it be better for them to not have that child as opposed to having that child if they have this issue with comprehension that you lead to? that you're
No, it would be
alluding to?
better for the government. It'd be better for it would be better for the government to protect that life and for that baby to go into the adoption. To go into adoption. There's a lot of couples that are looking for newborn babies, especially. And when you talk about adoption, people talk about the foster care system. Oftentimes, the foster care system doesn't even grab newborn babies because the newborn babies are at a high demand. This is very wrong, and I feel wrong saying it, but people do value newborn babies as at a higher value than they do if they've aged, if they become like toddlers or they become older in the adoption system, because people feel they can raise the newborn baby from basically from birth. And so I think that that baby would be much better off living and being in the adoption system, than it would be being killed, which is essentially what's happening. I wouldn't call it murder because murder requires intent. And I think there's not enough education going around, about fetuses and how live fetuses are, to say that people have intent of killing the baby. But I would go as far as to say is killing, and would possibly go as far as to say unintentional manslaughter.
Okay, I'm not gonna go that far with it. As a matter of fact, I relate back to my belief that viability has to be there, even for there to be a possibility for us to question whether or not there should be life. If there's not viability, to me, again, and this is where we're going to differ on, maybe the science of it, or our personal and religious beliefs are going to differ here. But to me, it's at that point, it's still symbiotic. It needs the mother in order to survive, and that mother shouldn't be held to that standard if that mother is not equipped or does not want to take care of that child. Here's one thing I look at. Let's say that the mother is unable to feed and clothe herself adequately. She's living in an impoverished situation. Yes, she got pregnant. However, she wants to get an abortion. Now she can't get an abortion. As a result, she has a malnourished baby, and our criminal justice system says, you didn't take care of yourself while you were pregnant. This is child abuse. So then that puts, again, the mother has the onus to feed that child while in the womb, has the onus to care for herself and that child, even if there isn't the ability to do so. And we're not talking about physically, we're talking about financially able to provide for herself, right? If she is not financially able to provide for herself and thereby cannot take care of the child inside of her, they've done it at like Cardin Children's Hospital out here in Arizona. They've picked people up because they were not able to take care of their child in womb, and they've arrested them for child abuse. So that's an issue that I have with that.
I would go as far as to say that would go into mother's health, infant's health, exceptions. When it becomes that, it's a mother's health, infant's health, exception. And so I feel like that's what that would fall into. I feel like that would be a viable reason to get adoption. Morally, for me, I think that's not a reason. But again, that's my morals. I try to keep my religion and my morals out of what goes into practicing law.
Right.
In no way do I want to see the church become the state. You see so many issues with that with other countries when the church has become the state. I think the church should remain separate from the state. And so, with that being said, me as a Christian, I have to make that conscious decision to remove Christianity from when I'm looking at laws and when I'm looking at what should rule the country.
Fair.
I have to remove my own religious bias and try to look at it through a more neutral frame. But I feel like that would go into mother's health, infant's health exception. And again, this would be over when you talk about medical advancements into what you would consider medical advancements into like what you would consider like an artificial womb. And so at that point, I think that abortion would just be morally incorrect, considering that those are human lives. And I think and you were talking about viability before. Viability is a very tricky topic, but it also only seems to happen. People only talk about viability when it happens on the front side, not the back side. People talk about viability when you talk about infants, when you talk about young humans. That's when you talk about viability. Viability is rarely ever talked about when you talk about people who are old. They are someone who's old or is in the hospital
Mhm.
and is going to get better. The doctor says that they're going to get better. They just need to be put on life support, and they need all this extra stuff for them to be able to survive.
Mhm.
They're not viable without that equipment. And so when you talk about viability, it seems very contradictory to me that it's viability at the front end, but you don't talk about viability at the back end. So like, when would you say life starts, and when would you say life begins? I mean, sorry, when would you say life starts, and when would you say life ends?
I've generally gone with a pretty common um, ideal around that, which is when the baby takes its first breath. That's typically what I've used as when it begins, and life ends when life ends. Now, if you're asking if I believe in like compassionate euthanasia, I absolutely do. I think that if somebody is not well in their older years and their quality of life is such that they're not sustaining and they're not happy with their life, they should have every right to choose to end their life in the most humane way possible. So, I while
See,
I
I don't believe in euthanasia. I think I think it's going against the human's right to life. But because I mean, you can look at it this way too. Suicide has been made federally illegal. And that was made that way so that way we could prevent humans from taking their own lives because we hold human life with great respect. And I feel like that's just lost when we come to babies. But back to the euthanasia, I disagree with euthanasia. For basically the same grounds I disagree with abortion. And I do not disagree with DNR. Do not resuscitate. I think that a do not resuscitate order, you're already dead at that point. And resuscitating you, would be your choice. If you have a DNR on record, then they shouldn't bring you back to life. Which is normally what resuscitating is seen as, is bringing someone back to life.
right.
And so I believe in DNRs. I do not believe euthanasia should be legal in the United States.
So if euthanasia should not be legal, should the death penalty be legal?
Yes, I think the death penalty should be legal because I think there are some crimes that are so heinous, that you're either going to live your life in prison and just die in prison, in which they can cause more harm in prison. You see this with people like Charles Manson, that ended up causing harm in prison. And so there comes a point to where the crimes that you've done are so heinous that it needs to be taken into a different standard of punishment, which would often be considered capital punishment.
Okay, so right to life exists until you reach a point of chaos or chaos, the
Until you
ability to
forfeit
evoke
that,
chaos in some way in society that warrants your death.
until you
Somewhat.
forfeit that right to life, yes,
And,
you can
and
forfeit a right.
and how would you forfeit that right to life?
Murdering several people. Um, Basically, whatever. We can go through what's punishable by capital punishment. We can go through like what crimes are punishable by that. But I think that like I said, there are certain crimes that are so heinous. And I don't think me and you really want to go down the road of looking at this crime and saying, is this capital punishment? Looking at this crime and saying, is this capital punishment? I think that's kind of
Sure,
outside the scope here.
sure.
But yeah, I think that there are some crimes that are so heinous that capital punishment, is a thing because they forfeited their right to life.
Okay, so in that instance, the state can control the right to life for somebody, and in the case of a mother choosing whether or not to have a child, the state also gets to control that right to life, even though that could potentially cost the mother her life. That could potentially cause economic strain. That could potentially cause issues for the family unit. Or it could just be something where the woman is not ready or equipped to have a child, and there was something that happened. I mean,
Here's where I'm gonna go with this. And this is something a lot of other pro-lifers don't really talk about. Is that I would be for women getting tax tax deductions as if they had a dependent while pregnant. I would be for a man giving child support while the woman is pregnant. I would be for these things because it's important to take care of that woman. I would also be for a woman being able to apply to things such as I forget exactly what it's called, but it's the one where if you have a baby, then you can get certain food groups and
Like WIC.
WIC, yeah. So I would be for a woman being able to get WIC while pregnant. I think that if we're going to go down this road and we're going to say this is a life, then we treat it like a life. We go through all these different programs to where if you have a baby, is it different than when you're pregnant? Yes, then it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be different than when you're pregnant. A lot of people actually, sorry, not a lot of people. This has happened throughout the United States history, where people would get into a car crash with someone who's pregnant. And they'd be convicted or charged and convicted with a crime as double homicide or double manslaughter, double unintentional manslaughter, because that baby is considered a life underneath the eyes of the law. It's just very ironic that everywhere else underneath the law that it's not considered a life. It's only considered a life when someone else takes it.
Right? Could that be
That isn't a doctor.
it's a wanted life? It's a maybe even a planned life as opposed to maybe an unplanned scenario. Something
That woman could be going to the abortion clinic and get hit by a car, and she and her infant die, or just the infant dies, and the person who hit them, or whoever's at fault, can and most times would be charged with manslaughter.
Sure,
at the very least.
But do you think that presumption in the law is because they're presuming that the woman wants that life?
That is the presumption in the law, yes.
Right.
But is the woman so are we saying that the defining point of a life is whether your mom wants you or not?
Yeah, in the womb, yeah. Once you're born, that's a different story. But in the womb, yeah, I would say so.
I think that's highly debatable because you sit here and go back and forth, and we can just sit here and go back and forth. Is it a life or is it not a life? If that whole question depends on whether the woman wants it or not, then it's a very off base question because you could go back and forth. There's not going to be an answer because it's based off someone's opinion, and I don't think life is based off opinion. I think life is based off of. I think it's based off of biology. I think it's based off of certain other things, but I never think that life is based off of an opinion. And I think it would be dangerous to go down that route to say that, yeah, this life is based off this opinion, and it's only alive because of that opinion. If that opinion changed, then this was no longer alive. That goes against the laws of biology. It goes against the laws of basically anything medical. There is not anything that says like if this opinion is true, then it is a life. If this opinion is false, then it's not a life.
But we're going under the premise, right, that like for at least for me, my perspective being that life isn't born until it takes its first breath, right? So by that rationale, for me, when I look at this, I see it as this is a bundle of cells, unless that person says this genetic material that's inside of me, I want to have that child. We're going to make that assumption because we assume, yes, that people want to have the children that they're pregnant with, but that's not always the case. And it's up to them to decide what to do with that genetic material. Now, once that baby is born out into the world, yeah, absolutely, it's guaranteed every single right that you or I would get, despite whatever the circumstances may be. But until that happens, yeah, I don't see it as a life. I see it as, a part of the woman. I see it as a symbiotic relationship with the woman that's not distinct or different. And while the law may count that as like a double homicide or a double manslaughter charge, that's going to be entirely up to me. I would say, whether or not that woman was intending to have that child. What if she didn't know she was pregnant? I think there's a lot of variables there, but I understand the way the law is written, and I agree that is the way the law is written. As to whether or not how prosecutors will prosecute that, it could be a little bit different. A lot of times they look at the gray area like that.
So do you think that I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. We'll get through this together.
Do you think so? You think that the fetus is just part of the woman while it's a fetus?
Correct. I think
Okay.
it's part of the woman.
Do you think that I mean, are you aware the fetus has unique DNA? The DNA that the fetus has is 100% unique to itself. It's not at all correlated with the mother. The only relationship it has is what we would define on the outside as a dependent or a child's child father, child mother resemblance in DNA. We can see that yes, this is its mother, but the entire DNA sequence of the child is 100% unique to that.
Sure, it's still you could go through that and pick apart and say, yeah, it's half mom, half dad, roughly. Again, what traits are going to get from DNA we know is varied based off of dominant and recessive traits, of course. But overall, that is the mother's genetic material to choose what she wants to do with it. For example, let me put it to you like this: what if
So what about
somebody
the dad's genetic material? Because it's you said it's about half half. So what about the father's genetic material?
is the father carrying the baby?
No, the father's not carrying the baby, but it's still his genetics. Am I wrong?
Sure, but he's not carrying the child, right?
No, but I mean, if you want to go in down, I mean, we
So
can go
I
down
mean,
this
if you
road.
want,
But
if you want to
father's
implant,
experience,
if you want to,
father's experience, very severe psychological issues. When a woman gets an abortion without telling the father, without the father agreeing with it, the fathers will have these severe psychological issues because they lost their baby. That's what happened. They lost their baby. Their baby is killed. They will never get to meet their baby. They will never get to go to their high school graduation. These psychological conditions aren't rare among men who disagree with the baby being aborted, and the baby got aborted anyways.
but again, that's the male is not carrying the child. And I sympathize with that. Listen, I was with somebody who had a miscarriage, so I know what it's like to be in that position, and I know what it's like what you're talking about. While it wasn't it wasn't aborted, and it wasn't something where I didn't know. It was a pretty tragic experience, but I was not conscripted to carry a child for 9 months. I was not conscripted to end up with fucking stretch marks all over my body, hurting breasts, fucking swollen feet, high blood pressure, potential onset for some women who have dormant lupus in their body end up going into activating lupus, and they don't find out until they're pregnant. You know, there's a million things that happen to a woman during the course of a pregnancy that may not end in them dying, but does still have significant effects on their body. And when we talk about, listen, nobody's going to go make me go do strenuous workouts for 9 months straight and lift fucking the equitable amount of weight on my body every day for 9 months, deal with all of the shit that goes into that. I'm never going to have to deal with that. So so if I can't be conscripted to do that, how can I then conscript somebody else to do that?
But you're conscripted to pay however much it is per month, which sometimes becomes absolutely ridiculous how much it is per month. But how much ever it is per month for 18 years, you are conscripted to that. Men by like almost entirety, if they decide that they no longer want to be in the relationship, even if they are active in the child's life, they're conscripted by the court that they need to pay the mother so much money a month because that is their kid. And so I mean, I guess I would offer you this question. If you're okay with saying that like this isn't that women are conscripted to do this, do you think men should be forced to be conscripted to give child support to the mother, or do you think that through figurative language, the father can financially abort the baby?
I think that if you're going to conscript the mother to have the child, that the father should be conscripted to pay child support.
No, I don't disagree. I don't need my plan. I don't need my plan. Okay, go ahead.
If you're going to allow the mother to abort, which I think is appropriate if they choose to do so, then yes, I think that if the father in some way is willing to relinquish any and all connection with the child, any and all responsibilities, rights, or anything to the child, and they don't want to pay child support, and the mother still wants to have that child, and they're, they do that,
I'll be right
then
back. I'm so
that's
sorry.
entirely up to them. And I don't think that there would be a problem with that. But,
So
again, it's the same thing, like you're going to have to, even if the mother goes to abort, on some level, there's going to be a conversation with that father, on some level. Whether there doesn't have to be, but, I think you'd find more often than not, unless father is basically knocked somebody up and then took off out of town and doesn't really care about the kid anyways, there's going to be some element of conversation.
Granted, there could be a relationship in which the woman finds out she's pregnant, decides to go get an abortion, and then the man finds out years later that she was pregnant and she had an abortion and he never knew about it. There are cases like this that have happened. I would say it's rare, but they have happened. But I completely agree with what you were saying prior to that. I think that if abortion is to be allowed, that a man should be allowed to forfeit his parental rights to the child and not have to pay child support. Whereas if we go with something like I'm conscripting, a law that I'm saying that should go into effect, then the man should have to pay child support. And like I said, I've gone as far as to say that the man should have to pay child support during pregnancy. If they're not in the relationship and contributing to helping the woman out daily, then yeah, I think that the man should have to pay child support during pregnancy if abortion is eventually made illegal.
Yeah, I mean, sure, if it's made illegal. I would hope that it's not. And I also have questions about this, like, artificial womb, like forcing women to carry children, or not have abortions if there's artificial wombs that we can use in lieu of that. Do you not think they have any right at all to any of their genetic fucking materials?
No, I think that the right to life is going to overrule their right to their half of the baby, if that's what you want to call it. Then no, I think that once there is a medical technology that advances to the point to where we create an artificial womb, then by taking out a fetus, you are killing a human life that is viable outside the mother. The entirety of the pro-choice argument is that the mother has to like carry this child. The mother has to do this. The mother has to do that. Underneath what I would call as an artificial womb. Then as soon as the fetus is attached to the lining, which most women don't even know they're pregnant. I don't think any woman knows she's pregnant before the fetus attaches to the lining. Then you'd be able to safely remove that fetus from the lining and put it into an artificial womb, and that baby could grow up, live a great life. So no, I think that at that point it is killing, and I think at that point it would be murder to take that child out, just because. I mean, you wouldn't say this when the baby's born, that the mother has that genetic material, and so therefore the mother can choose to do with that genetic material whatever they wish. And so what makes it different when they're viable outside the womb and it's a artificial womb that they're put into afterwards, versus it's a breathing born baby that is viable outside the womb and they're going to the adoption agency?
Because, well, there's a number of reasons. For one, maybe the woman or the parents don't want to have to deal with a child coming back to them later in life and being like, oh yeah, by the way, you're my mom or dad. That could be a reason.
I mean, that sucks, but you decided to have sex. You knew the risks that came with, the risks that come with sex. Practically anyone who has sex, unless they are extremely mentally handicapped, then they know the risk that comes with sex. They know that having sex might lead to a baby, even when using a condom and or birth control. There have been people who have used birth control and condoms at the same time and still ended up getting pregnant. And so when you look at that, the risk is there. You're deciding to proceed in the activity, even though the risk is present. and then you just want to take away the human life because you decided that I don't want it coming up to me later in life saying, "Oh, you're my mom." That's ridiculous. That in no other circumstance would we logically be able to say, "Yeah, that sounds like a good reason as to why we should be able to kill somebody else." Is that I don't want them to come up to me later and say, "Yeah, you're my mom." It's like
They don't
in
want.
no
They
other
don't.
circumstance would that happen.
They don't want the financial, psychological, or sociological burden of having to deal with the fact that there's a child in this world. Maybe the simple fact that the child is in the world is damaging to them.
Then they should keep the child. If there being a child in this world is that psychologically damaging to their brain, then they should keep the child.
I want to go back to something. You asked something. You were saying something about the unique DNA that's created at conception. So, do you feel like, or is your position then that life begins at conception?
No, I think life begins. I think life begins when the fetus attaches to the wall of the. I can't think of the exact word. When it attaches to the wall.
Okay. I was just a little thrown off because you had said something about unique DNA, so I kind of wanted to probe that a little bit. But
No, I don't think I don't think it's actually a fetus until it attaches to the wall. At that point, it's just sperm and an egg that haven't exactly made it yet. Because sperm and egg do that all the time. It's not until they attach to the wall that they have any chance of viability. And so I mean it happens all the time. It's just when it attaches to the wall is when someone's considered pregnant.
okay, so the fact that there's unique DNA alone doesn't classify it as a life. It's not until that unique DNA actually attaches to I'm going to get this all fucked up. The wall of the cervix, I believe. I'm probably wrong about that. That life occurs.
I think that life occurs when a fetus is developing. A fetus doesn't develop until it attaches to the wall. I'm gonna figure out what exactly the uterus wall.
Uterus. Yeah, sorry.
So I don't think that life occurs until the fetus attaches to the uterus wall because there's no development prior to the fetus attaching to the uterus wall. And again, at this point, when we're talking about a fetus, we're talking about literally sperm and egg attached to each other, and this happens all the time outside of this. It just doesn't always attach to the uterus wall. Actually, that's what birth control does a lot of times. Is it blocks it blocks eggs from being able to attach to the uterus wall, which therefore blocks pregnancy. Again, birth control does have the chance to fail. So if someone's taking birth control and thinking like, oh, it's 100% blocking the uterus wall, it's not doing that. It's making the uterus wall not suitable for life. And there is a chance that a egg can decide that it is suitable and get impregnated anyways. But yeah, I don't think that life starts till the fetus attaches to the uterus wall.
Okay, so you know that molar pregnancies are made up of unique DNA and they can attach to the uterine wall, right?
I'm sorry?
You understand that molar pregnancies, they are unique DNA and they can attach to the uterine wall. And a molar pregnancy would have to be removed. It's essentially a tumor.
Non-cancerous, sorry, I'm reading up on this. Is non-cancerous tumor that develops in the uterus as a result of non-viable pregnancy. Oh yeah, it's non-viable. Okay.
So you're,
but
you're
there's
okay with
there's
that
a difference
removed.
between something that's non-viable and it's viable.
Right,
Like I said,
okay.
infants' health is a thing that I would have an exception for. This is non-viable. It doesn't even have the chance to be viable. When you look at a fetus, is what I'm saying. Then you're talking about something that is viable, has the chance of viability, has the high chance, almost 100% chance. We're talking like 99.98 maybe percent chance of being viable past what it is right now. So yeah, I think that when you talk about a molar pregnancy that's not viable, then you're talking about something else that's like, okay, well, I guess I'm confused as to why you bring up this point, essentially because it's 100% non-viable.
Okay, fair enough. So then a lot of times, like Plan B could eliminate a pregnancy well before the attachment of of any cells to the uterine wall, are you okay with Plan B?
Yeah, I'm fine with Plan B.
So so then that would make you pro-choice. If you're fine with abortion before 10 days, and that's pro-choice.
I'm fine with it before it attaches to the uterus wall. Yeah, and Plan B usually stops pregnancies before it hits the uterus wall. So I mean, I'm fine with Plan B. What I'm not fine with is when there's a developing fetus inside of the womb, and it's decided that more so out of convenience, that the human life no longer matters, and it is terminated on behalf of the person who decided that to bring the human life into existence anyways.
And I guess that's the other thing is not every time we have sex are we trying to bring a human life into the
No,
world.
but you're taking that risk.
Sure.
Not every time. Not every time. Not every time that I do something stupid, am I gonna break an arm? But I sure as hell am taking that risk.
We take a risk driving our car every day, but
Yeah,
we don't
you
count on
take a
getting in a
risk.
car accident. Like
No, you don't. But when you do get in a car
happens.
accident, you are liable for what happens afterwards. Especially if it's your fault, you're liable for medical bills of you and whoever you hit. You're liable for all kinds of things. So if you make that mistake and you knew what risk there was, and you're liable for it.
Right. So, but what if, say, it wasn't you who was at fault for the accident, right? How could this happen? A condom breaks. That's not you at fault for the accident. That's not you at fault. You did everything you could to protect yourself. We say that condoms are very protective.
You're
take
still
birth
very
control,
aware. You're still very aware of the fact that the risk of pregnancy. Condoms have never been known to be 100% accurate. Condoms, even on their box, claim they're not 100% accurate. And so, you are taking that risk. That a condom is going to break, sperm is going to get loose. You're taking that risk that might happen.
So,
and you deal with the consequences afterwards.
So if I'm driving in my car and I get into an accident that's somebody else's fault, and my seatbelt malfunctions, and I go through the windshield and I die, then it's my fault because the seatbelt malfunctioned, even though I had no control over that and I did everything I could to protect myself. That would be the equivalent.
Seatbelt malfunctioning is not the equivalent of a condom breaking. A seatbelt malfunctioning, seatbelts have guarantees that they will not fail during a car crash. These are guarantees that are given out by the cars or the car manufacturers, and this is by law that they have to guarantee these seatbelts are going to do their job during a car crash. And the condom in no way guarantees that it will not break or that there is no risk for pregnancy at that time.
Actually, my dad worked with Ralph Nader on a seatbelt case that was just about the liability issue you're talking about. Car companies can't guarantee 100% that those seatbelts will save lives. As a matter of fact, that was the ruling. They absolutely cannot do that because there is always going to be a chance that seatbelts can malfunction. Always going to be a chance the seatbelt can malfunction. You can't make that guarantee.
So there's someone else who wants to come in, and I'd be more welcome having him in. And after a little bit more of us talking, Woodsman will he wants to come in and say some stuff. I don't know exactly what he wants to say, but he's spamming my chat, so I figured I'd let him know that I'm reading the chat. But
we'll hold off on that.
We'll hold off on that for right now. But what I am saying is that they get sued when a seatbelt malfunctions. Car companies get sued because I have an uncle that works in a car company, and they get sued for a malfunctioning seatbelt, and sometimes they'll end up having to put out a I forget exactly what they call it, but essentially where they're like, come bring in your car and we'll replace the seatbelt, and because it's malfunctioning for certain people, and so they'll have to replace the seatbelt with something that's better, and they will get sued, and people will get their claims out of that lawsuit. They will get money, monetary gain. I'm not saying that monetary gain is worth the life, but what I am saying is that at a certain point, we're sitting here talking about seatbelts, and they do get sued for that. You can't sue a woman for aborting her pregnancy. One,
But
I mean, I guess when a condom breaks, you're talking about the adding of human life, and when a seatbelt breaks, you're talking about the subtraction of human life. I don't
so
see the consequences as the same.
so you don't think that then should people who have a condom break, should they be able to sue the condom company?
No, the condom company says that there's a percentage chance that the condom will break, and to basically have sex at their own risk.
Okay, but then they shouldn't have to, you shouldn't have to drive at your own risk. You should only, basically what we're saying is the only time in which we should be able to sue a part, like an entity that is not, that we shouldn't be able to sue an entity that is failing their equipment, or what they have is failing to do its job, is when it comes to condoms and then breaking during the course of intercourse, which results in a child.
No, you know just as well as I do. There are other products out there. When the product fails to do its job, they don't get sued because it's ridiculous, because they put it on the box that there's a percentage chance it's not going to work, and then you get to do whatever activity it is at your own risk because you understand a certain percentage that whatever this is not going to work. You don't just get to sue when the company clearly says there's a percentage of the time that this isn't going to work.
Well, just like everything else, right? But we also know that with everything else, you have a way in which you can mitigate the damage that's been done. And some people feel, unfortunately, I don't know that I feel this way, but some people feel that the pregnancy is damage done. Could you see how that could be the perspective of somebody?
I can see how people can see it as damage done, and I think that at that point you're talking about a human life. And like I said, I'm not against Plan B. Let's be honest here. When the condom breaks, it's not a surprise when your condom breaks. It's not like shocked and oh, I didn't know the condom broke the entire time. When a condom breaks, and so when we're talking about this, take a Plan B. Like, if the condom breaks as soon as that happens, take a Plan B. If you are that psychologically concerned that you would be pregnant, take a Plan B pill.
So okay, I appreciate that. So we've come to determine then that yes, you are pro-choice.
I guess I'm very, very, very limited pro-choice.
Okay. Hey, we're getting somewhere. We're making some progress here.
If you would call saying Plan B is okay as pro-choice, then I'm very, very, very limited pro-choice. So.
Okay, so there is an agreement, because Plan B is a form of abortion. It is a form of abortion. No matter how you want to slice it, it's medically induced. It's pharmaceutically induced abortion.
I don't see it as abortion. The fetus has not hit the uterus wall yet. It hasn't attached to the lining of the uterus wall. And that's what Plan B is intended to stop. It's the same thing that birth control is intended to stop, unless we're going to go as far as to say that birth control is medically given, pharmaceutically given abortion, which I think that's a far stretch. Just like I think Plan B is a far stretch to call it abortion. I think that's basically where this comes down to, and that Plan B is not an abortion, but rather a birth control method.
I would say that yes, that I would call birth control exactly what it says, birth control, and I would call Plan B a method by which to get rid of that clump of cells in the woman's body that hasn't quite turned into a baby because it hasn't breathed its first breath yet. So I agree with you. That's one way to eliminate an unwanted pregnancy, and we can both agree.
Planned Parenthood even agrees.
Way to do that.
Planned Parenthood even disagrees with you that it's an abortion. That's not an abortion. Planned Parenthood says this: the morning after pill will not induce an abortion in a woman who is already pregnant, nor will it affect the developing pre-embryo or embryo. Emergency contraception prevents pregnancy and helps the woman prevent the need for abortion. Yes, this medication is emergency contraception. And according to Healthline.com, Plan B is not the same thing as an abortion pill. It does not cause abortion or miscarriage. Plan B, also known as the morning after pill, is a form of emergency contraception that contains levonorgestrel, a synthetic form of the hormone progestin. So, I mean, any source I'm going to is disagreeing with you that Plan B is seen as a form of abortion. Plan B is seen as a form of uh, emergency contraception preventative.
So what if Plan B is not available to somebody because of the state they live in, such as a state like Texas or something like that? You know, what is their alternative at that point?
Plan B isn't available in Texas.
I'm just saying in states that, and I may not be, Texas may not be this way, but I'm referring to states that are very strict on abortion, on even having like Planned Parenthood or family planning clinics, which a lot of these places have shut down for fear that they're going to
Can you name the
administer
state?
abortions.
Can you name the state? Because I have a high doubt that any state has done away with family care clinics
or made them
Plan B.
Made them hard to get to. Texas has done that. Louisiana has done that. Mississippi
Made them hard to get to. Can you define made them hard to get to?
limited the amount of facilities to the point where people are having to drive all the way across state, things like that. There was just a law in Texas that was passed that said that women can't get any form of abortion, right? Or somebody
And
can tell
like I
on
said,
them
Plan
and
B,
file lawsuits, you know.
Plan B is not considered abortion
Is,
underneath any expert's eyes.
is it under the laws, though? Because the laws are not the same as what experts say.
Texas abortion law, Plan B. Let's see. Senate Bill 8, which is otherwise known as the abortion law in Texas. Consider the nation's most restrictive abortion law, bans abortion as early as 6 weeks into the pregnancy. The law has spurred organizations and abortion funds in South Texas to provide emergency contraception, otherwise known as Plan B, and out-of-state travel assistance. Poverty and immigration status can cause further challenges for these seeking the procedure underneath the ban. So yeah, even underneath the Texas ban, Plan B is still available. Considering that people are shipping Plan B into Texas, to try and provide that for people who think that they may have gotten pregnant. So Texas, the law in Texas has not prevented Plan B as a type of abortion because even Texas lawmakers understood that Plan B is an emergency contraceptive, not abortion.
Can I jump in here real quick? And I just have a quick question for Sprout. If Plan B was considered a form of abortion, would it change your opinion on anything?
No. Again, I think that life starts when the fetus attaches to the uterus wall. The uterus aren't lying on the wall, and so Plan B is prior to that. So I consider that prior to life starting.
Jason, is there anything in this point that would go beyond what Sprout just said?
Say again?
Is there anything else that does not answer for you about abortion from Sprout?
No. I mean, he's made it clear his stance, which is that, you know, Plan B is fine. Anything beyond what Plan B can resolve is not. And I stand firmly on my belief that, you know, women have a right to decide what to do with their bodies.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
would
not moved, but I do appreciate that sentiment.
I just want to make sure that we're not arguing over labels rather than the actual debate here.
Sure.
Okay.
We can resurface onto another topic, I think, or we'll keep on abortion, but since we'll try and keep on topic. I will let you two resume at whatever point. I'm sorry for interrupting.
You're good. So I think me and you are just going to inherently disagree. That our inherent disagreement, and I guess, and I can point this out just point blank, is when life starts. And I think that's the inherent disagreement between pro-choice and pro-life, is where exactly does life start? And I want your opinion as to why you think that life starts when the baby takes its first breath. Why is that when life starts?
Because that's when the child is no longer tied to the mother and is no longer a symbiotic, and the mother is no longer serving as a symbiotic host to that child.
Okay, but what about when a baby is viable? Viable underneath, like, can live outside the mother's womb. Talking about 24 weeks. A baby can live outside the mother's womb. Baby is not considered alive at that point. And to add on to that, consciousness is known to exist in fetuses before they take their first breath. They're able to recognize their mother's and father's voices. They're able to recognize songs they hear while they're inside the mother. They're able to recognize these things when as soon as they come out of the womb, which highly suggests that their consciousness did exist inside the womb, and they were able to recognize these things because they have the memory of these things. So those are some counterpoints against life starting when the baby takes its first breath. I'm interested in you still defending the baby's life starts when it first takes its first breath.
Again, like if it's not separated from the host, to me, it's still part of the host. It's still part of the mother's genetic material until such time as it's been disconnected. It's as simple as plugging in a light plug would be like a way that I could analogize it for you. Like once, it's plugged into the wall, you got your power, whatever, it's working while it's plugged in. If you unplug it, it doesn't work. The same for me can be said with that, like until that child is in the world breathing on their own, until they are sustaining their own life, like, no, it's the woman's genetic material and hers to do with as she pleases.
So, I mean, with that being said, the baby is viable outside the womb at 24 weeks. So it's not considered a life, so you can kill it while it's inside the womb and then take it out of the womb, even though it was completely viable outside the womb, and they could have just taken it out of the womb, and it would have been viable. It would have been what you would have considered a human life because it would have been breathing at that point. But it's not a life because it's not taken out of the womb, and it's killed prior to coming out of the womb.
Yeah, basically that is exactly what I think. And my reasoning for that is that, again, it's ultimately the woman's decision what she wants done with the genetic material that's within her body.
But to be very clear, I want to be very clear about this. You disagree with I think it was the Tennessee governor. I mean, not Tennessee governor. It was one of the governors. I think it might have been Virginia, Northam. I forget which state he's the governor of, but Northam. To where he said that that it would be fine to basically let infants die of abandonment. When he said that we'll take the infant out and we'll make it nice and comfortable, and then we'll discuss on whether or not the parents want to actually keep the kid or not. I can pull up the exact quote of whatever he said. But he essentially suggested that when the baby is born, that it can die of neglect as an abortion.
I think once the baby's born, you're fucked. So like anything post birth abortion like Northam's talking about, I would not agree with. But yeah, if it's in the womb, if it's still a part of the woman, it's still a part of the woman.
Okay, so you think that putting a lethal injection into the baby would be fine when it's viable outside the womb. So talk about like 32 weeks when the baby's clearly scientifically viable outside the womb. That put a lethal injection into the baby and then let the baby die from the lethal injection and then take the baby out of the womb.
I think it actually liquefies a little bit before it comes out, but yeah, essentially, yeah. Because again, the woman's got to decide whether or not she wants to go through certain procedures, whether or not she wants to carry the baby, what have you. So yeah, I mean, whatever they need to do while the baby's inside of the woman, they have fully whatever they need to do. As far as I'm concerned, if they want to abort that child or abort that bundle of cells, if you will.
Okay, I think I've asked all my questions. Where I think we're at now is kind of a standstill. Me and you inherently disagree on where life starts.
Yep.
And I don't think there's going to be any bringing us together on like where life starts. And I feel like this is going to become a very circular argument.
Sure.
As to me and you just keep repeating our points. And I think we've done that already. So I did want to ask those questions to just kind of get where exactly your thought process was, and I think I got it. But I am more than open if questions want to be taken from chat, or if we want to decide to let people in and talk for a minute. If that's the decision of the moderator, that's fine. But I'm gonna leave this open to the moderator unless you have anything to say, Jason.
Oh
Yeah, do
no,
you have anything
no.
else to add?
I actually really just appreciate the conversation. I know we vehemently disagree on this, but I'm glad that we could have a reasonable discussion that didn't turn into memery and bullshit. So I definitely appreciate that. So
All right. Well, I think we can hop into questions for chat. We've gathered quite a few of them for both of you. So for our first, well, I guess, do you guys want to have closing statements, or can we just forgo that?
yeah, I think we've.
Uh, I think we just had our closing statements.
All right, great. So we'll go into our questions then. For our first question, this is for Jason. What liberties are safeguarded for future generations among the rights to live, privacy, and rights for life, privacy, and dignity?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but if they're asking like what guarantees there are for future generations that are already here on this earth, shit, I don't fucking know. There aren't any right now. We're in a fucking dangerous spot in this world as far as anything being guaranteed, and I think that's a whole other thing that we need to contend with.
All right. Since Sprout just hopped out, I'll go ahead and hit you with the second one, Jason. Are the rights of human beings ubiquitous, even if those rights are unknown or not understood by any particular human being?
I'm sorry, was that question for me?
That was for Jason again.
Okay.
I'll hit you with two after this. And I can also ask for a rephrasing of the question if you don't understand, Jason.
No, say it again. Oh yeah, I didn't catch it all. 'Cause it's coming back.
Are the rights of human beings ubiquitous, even if those rights are unknown or not understood by any particular human being?
Um,
I
we
can
would,
also ask for a
we
rephrasing.
would like to think so, right? But I mean that's really dependent on the perception of whoever is in that position. As far as I'm concerned, I would hope that at least on some fundamental level that human rights were ubiquitous once somebody is born into this world. Sure.
All right. Now for Sprout. Should women always have the right to decide when or if she becomes pregnant?
Um, I feel like that's a trick question. Sh Can you repeat that for me one more time? Sorry.
Uh, I'll try and also rephrase it. Should women always have the right to decide when or if they become pregnant? You could also, I think this means specifically to birth control of any kind.
Yeah, they should be able to take birth control. I don't think they always decide when and if they become pregnant. Birth control can fail, condoms can fail. And at that point, you decide. I mean, you still did decide to get pregnant. You decided to have sex, knew the risks that came along with it. And so at a certain point, you did decide to get pregnant. And so yeah, a woman always decides to get pregnant unless it's underneath rape, which is one of the exceptions I've supplied for is that an abortion should be allowed underneath rape.
All right. So the next question: other than a fetus, do women have the rights to remove any other parts of their body under your moral system, such as hair, fingernails, or organs?
Yes, yeah, I think that even a woman can get her tubes tied if she doesn't want any more. If she doesn't want kids, I think a woman should, no matter the age, if she's an adult, if she's above the age of 18, she should be able to get her tubes tied. I know there's a whole bunch of legal philosophy around that women shouldn't be able to get their tubes tied because they're going to want children later on in life, and so there's been a bunch of laws that have prevented that. But I think if a woman who's 18 or above wants her tubes tied, that should be a medical options provided to them.
Okay, so for this next question, I believe you already answered it, but just for the sake of asking it, so do you approve of abortions before 10 days?
Before 10 days. So I'm assuming what they mean is before it hits the before the uh, before the fetus attaches itself to the uterus wall. then
Yes.
it's not an abortion. It's been
Okay.
clear. Planned Parenthood, any expert you look it up, it's not an abortion prior to it hitting attaching itself to the uterine wall. Then it's considered abortion after that. So pre that, it's not even considered an abortion. I know there's some religious people who will consider it an abortion because that it is going to. I don't understand their thought process behind it. I think most of it's actually religious. Because the Bible says, "Before you were conceived, I knew your name." But that's a lot of what they'll throw at you. But looking at this scientifically and taking out the eyes of religion, I think that prior to it hitting the uterine wall, then it's not an abortion. It's not a baby yet.
Okay, and the final question for Sprout. Uh, do you think all fetuses are viable outside of the womb at 24 weeks?
No, there's a certain percentage of fetuses that aren't viable outside the womb at 24 weeks. 24 weeks is the lowest. It's the lowest age in which fetuses can be viable. Past 50%. Prior to 24 weeks, it goes underneath 50%. So with above 50% viability, scientists usually say that the baby is viable at that point in time, which means it can live outside the womb, not meaning it will live outside the womb. And if viability meant that 100% of babies will live outside the womb, then even giving birth at 9 months isn't viable. It's not viable for the babies. So there has to be some kind of give and take here when you talk about viability and the percentage of infants that will survive leaving the womb at that time.
All right, and I think we have one more question coming from chat, but it's still being typed. So I will give them a second to get that out. And I also, oh, here it is. If and I'm not sure who it's phrased to, so I guess this is phrased to Sprout. If it can be proven that a fetus is not sapient or sentient for most of a pregnancy, would Sprout's opinion or would your opinion change on abortion?
No, it's still a human life. And no matter how underdeveloped it is, it's still a developing human life, and we don't stop developing until the age of 26. And so at no point in time do we say that this is an underdeveloped human being. So its life does not matter. So no, I think that it's still a developing human being, and it's still like it's a human being. And I don't even think that. I don't even think that Jason would disagree with me when I say that a fetus is a very very low developed it's like I don't know how to say that, very like low developed human being. I think Jason would even agree that it is a human being, just at a very low development stage. And I'll let Jason answer that, but no, I think that the developing has already happened. It's a very low developed human being, but it's still a human being at that point. So with conscious or not, I think that it's still a human being, and we shouldn't take its life for convenience.
All right, Jason, do you have anything to say to that?
It's all I would say is that it's the genetic predispositional materials that would later make a human being. But no, so I don't inherently agree with that 100. I just think that the materials are there.
Maybe human being was a little too far. Do you believe it's of the human species?
I believe that on a cellular level there are human cells there. I'll put it there.
All right, I think that is the end of the questions.
Cool.
Our disagreement of when life started happened there again. So, this has been fun. I really appreciate this.
Me too. So I'm glad that we could have a reasonable conversation, not like screaming at each other and going on about absolutely crazy fucking out of this world notions of like aborting every child, unborn child. Because I will agree with you. That's generally a bad thing to do.